I'm going to be honest with y'all. Today has very real December 23rd vibes because really like the Christmas season is here. Like we have arrived smack dab in the middle of what we've all been waiting for. And we're on the doorstep of it. We got college football games tonight. So like stuff's happening. Much like December 23rd, you're going to holiday parties, you're eating Christmas cookies. Maybe you've even been a little bit on the eager side and opened some presents like we all did last Saturday. But we're 2 days away from the day that we've all been longing for since the confetti dropped in early January in Houston. We're back, baby. College football is here. And if you're just now finding us, this is the People's College Football Show, all right? It's college football, nothing but college football every single day right here on the On3 YouTube channel. I cannot stress this enough. We talk about college football from the perspective that we believe true college football fans want it talked about. So we're not into the clickbait, not into the hot takes or just trying to get traffic and say things to say things. Like this is a show that honors, respects, and loves the absolute heck out of college football with every fiber of our being. So if that's you, go ahead and lock in, hit subscribe. We're glad to have y'all here, man. It is Thursday, August 29th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet, and there is no shortage of things to talk about in the beautiful world that is college football in 2024. Week one is upon us, baby. We gave you our predictions on our Tuesday show. Today, I want to do one more final breakdown. We'll talk about what it's going to take for these respective teams to win in the massive matchups. I'm talking USC, LSU. I'm talking Florida, Miami, A&M Notre Dame, and all that, and a bag of chips for the week one slate. Upset alert. Maybe a better way to phrase this is upset watch, because whenever you talk about like upsets and teams being on upset alert, it's always just, toxicity in the comment section. Nonetheless, we're going to swing our sword, to quote the late, great Mike Leach, and we'll tell you who we're watching very closely now to potentially be on upset alert. All right, so we'll unpack that together. Also, we are going to talk through one of the most major matchups of the entire weekend. I've said it many times. I think it is the matchup of the weekend. It's Florida, it's Miami, in the swamp. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be, post-game cinematic Twitter for either side of that thing, losing and winning. What about the games within the game, though? What are the key matchups that we believe are going to determine the outcome of the game, and you as a fan watching at home should pay extra close attention to as this thing unravels? Michigan, their quarterback situation is still TBD. Sharon Moore gave us a bit of a timeline as to when we can expect a starter to be named. But even if they name a guy who's going to take the first snap, does that really mean we have the guy at Michigan? And then who do we think should be the guy at Michigan? And maybe what do they need at quarterback overall at Michigan if they want to go back-to-back and win another national title in 2024? We'll talk about that. And then a new segment to the Hard Count. I'm excited for this, y'all. On3's very own Kaiden Smith, who, if you've watched this show now, you can maybe see over my left shoulder. If you're watching on camera, the right shoulder. He's back in the office, back in the war room. He's going to join the show today, and we're going to talk through who could be the 12 seed when it comes to the college football playoffs. So that'll be a good time, man. We're fired up. We're glad to have y'all here. If you're new to the channel, again, welcome, subscribe. If you're more of a podcast person, y'all, we've just been seeing the podcast numbers continue to climb. Like a roller coaster right before you hit that big drop at your favorite spot, whether it's Six Flags or SeaWorld, if SeaWorld's still a thing. I don't know what the latest is on SeaWorld since the whole Blackfish thing came out. But regardless, glad to have y'all here. College football, nothing but college football for the next hour or so. So let's lock in, man. Let's have a great time. Let's start with the week one breakdown, if you will. We already gave you our predictions, but I think it's healthy for us to unpack some of these major matchups and unpack what it would take to win for either side. Let's start with Georgia Clemson. In Atlanta, noon kick. This is the one that you're watching. Hopefully, if you're using YouTube Multiview, we can get like a two-box setup where we got West Virginia, Penn State on one and Georgia, Clemson on the other. And if not, I would always recommend using the laptop as what I would call like the JV screen. You got your varsity screen with the game you want to watch. The JV screen is maybe the one you're just trying to pay attention to. At the end of the day, whatever screen you have this one on, this will be a big one. Now, Georgia, they're favored by 2 touchdowns. You know how we feel about that. If you watch this show, we like Georgia to roll. But even with that being said, what would it take for Clemson to win the football game? I think for Clemson, if you're watching the box score and you're trying to get an actual black and white feel for what it's going to take to find a way to win in Atlanta over what I believe is the best team in college football, you got to find a way to hold Georgia. And this is a tall task, but it's what it's going to take. I think it's 3 yards a carry. You can hold them to 3 yards a carry, you give yourself a chance. Because in that situation, that means that your defensive front, hopefully you're not having to add too much into that front seven, but at the end of the day, your defensive line and your linebackers are doing a good enough job to force third and passing. Okay, like we can live in like that third and potentially six. That's good enough to where, okay, we know it's probably a pass. We can plan accordingly. We can try and match up accordingly, and we'll live to play another down, live to play another series, and hopefully get the ball back to your offense. Because as much as it's going to take an effort defensively for Clemson to win this football game, like, it's going to take something offensively. How straightforward of a point is that? It's going to take, for me, Clemson going with a little sleight of hand schematically. This is not a game where you can say mano-a-mano, our guys versus your guys. We like our guys. Let's go roll. That's not a game that Clemson is going to win. It's going to take Garrett Riley stretching out, reaching deep into the bag of tricks, and hopefully reaping what he sows in that sense, and finding a way to manufacture some explosive plays. I said it on the prediction show. I'll say it again. I like the skill for Clemson this year. Now, does it reach its potential the first game of the 2024 season? I mean, if you're a Clemson fan, you're hoping and praying that it does, but that's what it would take. For Georgia, it's just going to take them being who we believe them to be, right? Like, this roster is so stacked. Kirby Smart talking about the deterioration of football. Newsflash, if the rest of the country is experiencing that, Georgia is experiencing that in a first world kind of situation. Ergo, their roster is better than everybody else's. Their depth is better than everybody else's. They just have to play their game. They can't roll out there and read their own press clippings and think they're the number one team in America. Newsflash, Kirby Smart will not allow that to happen. But pretty straightforward, Georgia has to play their game and play to their potential, which, again, kind of a simplistic talking point, but I really think it is that simple when you talk about this game, and that's the reason the spread is what it is. You got Notre Dame at A&M. This is the game that I'd probably put right behind Miami and Florida as like the one that I'm most intrigued to watch, because with the spread being 2.5 favoring A&M, you imagine a good amount of that is favoring A&M because they are the home team. You hear people talk about like the home field advantage being good for like 3 to 4 points. I think Notre Dame wins this football game if Riley Leonard can meet the moment. Again, sort of a cliche thing to say, but roll with me here. We're not sure what the Notre Dame O-line is going to look like. We're not sure exactly what they're going to bring to the table against a pretty talented defensive front in Texas A&M. So for Riley Leonard, there's a very good chance now that we're going to need you to show off that dual threat ability. I'm talking about like, hey, it's not there, pocket closes in, we can't eat a sack there on 3rd and 7 and expect to win this football game. Like I think Texas A&M is too good of an outfit top to bottom. They will make you pay if you take empty possessions too many times in a row. Riley Leonard has to be a guy that elevates in situations where the Notre Dame offensive line is just deficient. I think Mike Denbrock will also have a pretty heavy part to play in that, in scheming around the defensive front. We talked a lot about the modern triple option. That's going to be a big factor. But I need Riley Leonard to be decisive. I need him to be, for the most part, mistake-free. And then on top of that, talking about meeting the moment, I need him to deal some haymakers. I'm not talking about like after the whistle, throw a punch, get your team fired up. That would be a crazy storyline, and we talk about it. But what I want to see from him is when the deep ball is there. How many times have you heard me say this? When the deep ball is there, I need him to connect. Now, it might only be twice in this game. But Texas A&M last year in the secondary was not all that great. Now, there's some new faces. The folks in College Station feel a lot better about that unit going into this season. But it doesn't change the fact that there is something to be tested early in this game. Chris Mitchell is a major X factor in this game. He averaged 17.5 yards of reception last year. For those of y'all that don't know, that's ridiculous. Like that is dynamite explosive. Test that early. And when he's open now, it can't be a thing where you're watching the broadcast, you say, oh, we just missed him by a step. That can't be the situation. You cannot overthrow a dude that has 17.5 yards of reception a season ago. Cannot happen. So connect when there's money on the table. Now for Texas A&M to win this football game, stylistically, I think they need to make this a wrestling match as opposed to a boxing match. Because I just spoke to the haymakers that Riley Leonard really should hopefully be able to connect on if you're a Notre Dame fan. That can't be the style of game that A&M ends up playing. I like A&M's receiving core, but at the end of the day, like I like them much better in a game where They're having double-digit play drives. They're taking time off the clock. Connor Wegman, when he does push the ball deep, it's off play action. And Xavier Watts is trying to make a tackle up close to the line of scrimmage. Like, I need it to be a muddy, tiresome, brutal, nasty kind of game for A&M. Not because I don't think they can win in a shootout, but I don't think that style favors them. I think you would much rather have it be a situation where the defense leads the way, the offense works up front, that running back room with Le'Veon Moss leads, downhill and just consistently takes a sledgehammer to Notre Dame. That would be the style of game that I think they need to play. To do that, obviously, you got to play well defensively, and then on top of that, you got to run the football effectively. I told you in our prediction video, 3.5 yards a carry, 4 yards a carry is where I need them to be at if they're going to win this football game. So I talked about Texas A&M having to just kind of take a sledgehammer to this thing and have it be slow and methodical and take the air out of the football. USC LSU will not be that way at all. USC LSU, if you like points, if you've had a good time playing college football 25 over the course of the last few weeks, then you're at the right place, and this is the show for you because we respect everything about that culture. However, USC LSU, going to be a quarterback duel. All right, it's going to be points. It's going to be explosive plays. It's going to be Garrett Nussmeier, Miller Moss flexing. So simplistically, like, this may come down to which quarterback plays the cleanest. Just if we're all going to be honest here, it may come down to that. So for LSU to win the football game, I need them to get USC to consistently be in like that 3rd and 7 range, because what we've heard is Blake Baker, you get him to 3rd down, he is not worried about what you think about the secondary. He's going to heat you up. All right, he's going to apply some pressure. That was true of his defense at Missouri. That'll be true of this defense at LSU. Now remember, who's on this defense at LSU? A1 Harold Perkins, now rocking the number 7. They're going to cut him loose. And so if you get to 3rd and 7, you cut Harold Perkins loose enough times now, that's going to create some mayhem. We got more thoughts on Harold Perkins a little bit later in the show, but the point remains the same. Get to 3rd down, have a chance to wreak havoc. That's all you can ask for. In the city of Las Vegas, where gambling is one of the major generators of that economy, let's gamble a little bit on 3rd down. Let's get to 3rd down so we can gamble. Now for USC, I think they can win this football game if, and only if, they take body blows and avoid like the knockout punches. A lot of combat sports being baked into this segment, so we appreciate y'all for dialing in with the MMA and boxing and wrestling references. It can't be a situation where USC gets it to 3rd and 6, gets it to call it 3rd and 3, and then Garrett Nussmeier goes over the top to Kyron Lacey, to C.J. Daniels, strike up the band. I'm okay with USC taking the body blows. I'm okay with them giving up 3 yards a carry, 4 yards a carry, and just having it be a slow, methodical kind of drive. Because the thing with that is, that means that typically, if you're having to run the football and can't have success throwing the ball downfield against LSU, you're going to get to the red zone, the field condenses, there's a lot less space to work with, and if that's the rhythm, they're going to have to settle for 3 instead of 7. You can't settle for 3 in this football game and expect to win. It's not going to happen. So for USC, again, take the body blows. That's fine. Just don't allow for that big play, deep shot, because at that point, start to press, start to maybe call some things offensively and make some decisions offensively you wouldn't make. Overall, it's a bad situation. You don't want that to happen. You allowed 7.7 yards a pass last season. LSU, they averaged 10.1. Got to fix that. Got to skew that number back towards USC's direction in this game to have a chance to get it done. If they can, there'll be very, very good vibes on Monday morning in Los Angeles. Now, for Florida-Miami, we're going to talk more about this game in just a little bit. But how much have we talked about the way that Cristobal has built this roster to a year like this and built the trenches to be in a position like they are right now? Like, they went to the portal now, and they treated that thing like a Walmart. They went out and got, a pretty large quantity of pieces, 15 to be exact. Simeon Barrow is a guy that I expect to have a very positive impact on the interior of that defensive line. Big body transfer from Michigan State, played a lot of football. Ruben Bain is a name that a lot of folks in Coral Gables already know. A lot of folks that really pay attention to this sport nationally already know. Freak show, true sophomore, everything last year, it felt like. He's in for another big year. Tyler Barron, the transfer from Tennessee by way of Louisville, he's now at Miami. So they have a lot of pieces now, and that looks like an advantage. If it's going to be a Miami win, that has to be as advertised. Has to be as advertised. Because if they don't bring their A game, and it's not actually like a decisive Miami victory up front, well, then Florida gets to kind of open up the playbook a little bit. They get to be a little bit more dynamic. They get to have some push up front in the run game, and then you have to overcompensate, and then things happen downfield. More on that in a little bit, but like overall, the defensive line, the trenches for Miami, has to be what we have assumed it's going to be going into this game. The reason why I mentioned that, remember, we kept telling you last week, hey, Florida State, the defensive line, really good. And it wasn't just us. Pete Thamel on College Game Day said they're the best defensive line in America. He didn't make that up. It wasn't him just grasping at straws. Like, that was believed to be factual going into that game. Ended up not being the case. Miami fans are going to hate me comping you to Florida State. I'm just saying that cannot be the same thing we're talking about after the game of, wow, we really whiffed on the defensive line with what we assessed them to be. Cannot be the case. So that paired with Cam Ward and just, we keep saying this, but his pulse when he walks out there in the swamp has to be steady. It has to be. It's a tall task. It's going to be, I believe, the toughest environment he's ever had to play in as a collegiate quarterback. Like, it's going to be very difficult with this atmosphere. It's a big reason why we like Florida a lot in this game. But if Miami is going to be able to handle the external circumstances that is the swamp, Cam Ward is the tone setter for all of that. As your leadership goes, so your football team goes. Cam Ward is the alpha of this football team. Ask anybody. They'll tell you that. If he's not having his heartbeat accelerate and the eyes get big, the rest of the roster will respond accordingly over the course of the game. So if that's the case, that minimizes the home field advantage for Florida. We look at this game very, very differently. So for Florida, if they want to win the game, Trey Wilson has got to be the ace of spades. Eugene Wilson, third wide receiver for Florida. He averaged 9 yards a touch in 2023. I don't think we even saw his best over the course of last season. Another year with Graham Mertz, more weapons around him. If Trey Wilson gets going early, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show as well, if he gets going early, good things are happening for Florida because that kind of unlocks the rest of the offense. More guys get open. You start to use him as a decoy as the game wears on. Maybe you get him in a motion across the formation. Boom, we're back across the other way with Baugh. Like, there's a lot of good things that can happen if Trey Wilson gets cooking. And I think especially situationally, like I'm talking, this game is going to be close, going to be down to the wire, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1. You go to Trey Wilson. He has to be your ace of spades, your answer for you in this game. Now, in addition to that, we talk a lot about how good Cam Ward is, especially ad-libbing. If Florida wants to lose this game, let Cam Ward ad-lib. Let him just run around back there, play Houdini. You try to tackle him, he reverses field. Because what that does is not only does it wear out your front seven, but also it allows the Miami receiving corps to have time to separate downfield. It's tough for anybody to cover anybody for more than 3 to 4 seconds, let alone 5 to 6 if he's able to utilize his athleticism and eventually find someone open downfield. Cannot happen. And if you're Florida, it will not happen if you win this football game. So a lot to break down there. Week 1 is upon us. Let me know your takes as we jump into the glorious thing that is week 1 of the 2024 season. All right, so we're going to do this every single Thursday, and that is who is on upset watch. This lower third might be my favorite that we have ever had if you're watching live on YouTube. Little shark fin action courtesy of the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Brake. Treat this segment just like if there were a shark in the water. It doesn't guarantee a shark attack. It doesn't. It doesn't mean, oh, okay, you can't swim. I would advise against swimming, and I would understand there's definitely a shark right there and bad things could happen, but we're not calling our shot. We're not predicting it. In one of these games, we already have predicted an upset, and we'll mention it when we get there. But I'm just saying now, the comment section, if you want to experience real-life toxic in your life, go check the comment section to this video because it's going to be a lot of folks that haven't watched the video and telling you that we called an upset against X, Y, and Z team. It's not always the case. Again, this is just upset watch. Not a prediction, just upset watch for us all to be on the same page for as we jump into week 1. This week, with it being week 1, not maybe as full of an upset slate as maybe we'll get in other weeks. Got a little 3-piece special for you this week, extra sauce. And it starts tonight. If you're watching this after Thursday, well, then this game has already happened. Colorado -9.5 against North Dakota State. We've already done a prediction video, which is separate on the On3 YouTube channel. Wasn't a part of a live show, so go check it out on the On3 YouTube channel. We think Colorado wins this football game. However, the potential for upset is very much there because Colorado, man, I was talking with a buddy yesterday about this. It was like, dog, why if you're an FBS Power 4 team, do you schedule one of the best teams in FCS for your opener? Just a lose-lose. Because for Colorado, if you win this game, you were supposed to win this game. If you lose this game, man, I can't believe you lost to an FCS team. Like North Dakota State is very much so playing with house money. They have the second best odds in all of America to win the national championship for FCS. So just because they don't have that FBS sticker on their helmet does not mean they're not a really good team. This is by no stretch of the imagination a layup. The path we see to an upset here, it exists. North Dakota State averaged over 200 yards on the ground last year, y'all. Very, very evidently the issue for Colorado defensively is stopping the run, among other things. They revamped that front seven. Still, though, they allowed 175 yards on the ground a game last year, did Colorado. I love Shedeur Sanders. I love Travis Hunter. I love Jimmy Horn. I love all the offensive pieces throwing the football downfield for Colorado. But if you're having to watch the better part of that second quarter because they're just putting together a 14-play drive and you got to watch that thing if you're Shedeur Sanders, that minimizes the impact they can have. The test here, I think, is going to be really interesting for the way that Colorado approaches this game. Because Colorado, fair or not, has developed this reputation of, well, what's their culture like internally? Well, are they a team that plays for clicks, like some folks have mentioned? Is that the reality? I'm not telling you it is or isn't, but I am saying in this game, if you don't have your head on straight and you don't take this game seriously and you kind of sleepwalk through the first quarter, you're going to get beat. Like North Dakota State is not to be truffled with, to quote Michael Scott. So North Dakota State, it would not shock us if they pulled off the upset. But again, we have Colorado winning the football game, and we will stand on business there. Now, West Virginia, Penn State. Penn State is favored by 8.5. They got to go to Morgantown. We already called our shot here. We think this is an upset. We think West Virginia does beat Penn State. It's in Morgantown. Pat McAfee's on campus on Friday. That place will be absolutely berserk. I think they've already put out some different notices changing class schedules or traffic rules because of what they're expecting with how wild that atmosphere is going to be from Friday going into Saturday. It's a noon kick, sleepy noon kick for Penn State. You got to walk out there. 2 new coordinators. Last year, this game, even though the final score was very decisively Penn State, that was not how the game went. It was 14-7 midway through the third quarter for Penn State. And then they kind of got some mojo and found a way to pull away there in the third and fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, man, this was a close one. The difference for Penn State last year was they found some explosivity offensively. The man who generated that is gone. Keandre Lambert-Smith had 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards in this game a season ago. 1, that was at Penn State. 2, he's at Auburn now. So with it being on the road, with the new coordinators, with all the clunkiness, again, we think West Virginia pulls off this upset. A lot of experience back for West Virginia on the offensive side of the football. I believe they have 7 starters back. Mobile quarterback in Garrett Green. Always a nice little upset seasoning to put on there, sprinkle on there. West Virginia also finished the year pretty hot. Won 5 of their last 6. So we think Country Roads is blaring after this game. This is not just an upset watch, but an upset pick for us. Give us the Mountaineers over the Nittany Lions, and that'll be a noon kick. So if that happens, we'll know very early in the college football Saturday. And we will have a good time talking about that going forward. Boston College at Florida State is a Monday game. The beautiful part about week 1 now, you get a little Monday action. Florida State is favored by 16.5. I'm assuming that number would have even been greater before week 0. Florida State won this game by 2 last year. Final score was 31-29 Florida State. Thomas Castellanos is a name that very few folks in the college football world know. He's the quarterback for Boston College. He had a road to glory kind of game last year against the Noles. Now, granted, that one was at Boston College. This one will be in Tallahassee. But my guy went for 300 yards passing and darn near 100 yards rushing. We don't think this upset happens. However, I think this is one to just keep an eye on. Because remember, too, last year it was Duke and Clemson, and I guess that game was at Duke, but still, that was the Monday night game, and we're all kind of talking about, yeah, I guess Duke could pull it off. Good quarterback. I'm just saying, if correlation has anything to do with causation, that's one to watch. That's one to watch. Also, Florida State, if they don't figure it out up front on both sides of the football, you put more on DJU's play, and if that kind of has some hiccups again, I'm just saying. I am just saying, keep an eye on that one. So, three-piece upset watch. One of those we're calling out, right? West Virginia over Penn State. But Colorado, North Dakota State tonight. We think Colorado wins, but still a good litmus test. Something to see there. We think Florida State beats Boston College, but even with that being said, that's one I'd watch closely. And I would consider now potentially taking BC to cover that one. Just a thought. Bill O'Brien and the boys rolling into Tallahassee. Should be a good time. Again, the comment section, toxic, but it is what it is. Roll party roll. All right, so speaking of massive matchups now, let's talk about the games within the game. And I think the biggest game of the week is none other than Miami rolling into the Swamp, going toe-to-toe with Florida in what will be just absolutely pandemonium afterwards for either side, winner or loser, on Twitter post-game. What are the matchups that we believe are going to help determine the outcome of the game? So when you're watching at home, these are the battles within this ultimate battle that you can watch and say, okay, that's favoring Florida, that's favoring Miami. I'm going to roll with this team going forward here, or this is how they're going to win the football game. So we'll talk about that right now. Really quickly, though, two things I want to mention. One, subscribe to the On3 YouTube channel. College football, nothing but college football every single day. College football sickos, we appreciate y'all subscribing and being a part of this. Second thing I want to let y'all know, very proud to tell y'all that the hard count is brought to y'all this year by our friends over at Prize Picks. If you've never played Prize Picks, don't worry about it. They're equipping us, assisting us even in squeezing the ever-loving juice out of every single college football Saturday. Prize Picks, daily fantasy. We play exclusively in the college football department of Prize Picks. Prize Picks is very easy to use. You put two or more player projections together, pick more or less on those projections to make a lineup, and you're off to the races. Easy withdrawal, safe to use. You use code HARDCOUNT. Right away, you play $5 in lineups. You get $50 in promo funds. Also, Prize Picks has a nice little free square going on right now. Jalen Milroe, half a passing yard. Take the more there, you're off to the races. So, appreciate Prize Picks. Again, code HARDCOUNT at prizepicks.com. $5 in lineups gets you $50 in promo funds. We'll have some picks for you here at the end of this segment as well. But the battle that I'm watching here in this game, I don't know how many times I've talked about Trey Wilson throughout the course of this week, but the cat and mouse game between how Florida wants to utilize him and how Miami decides to try and contain him, the battle here is Trey Wilson, the Florida receiver, versus the defensive coordinator for Miami and Lance Guidry. Because I think the give and take here is you want to defend Florida's best offensive weapon. That's 100% the case. However, you don't want to overcompensate and then allow guys like a Aiden Mizell or a Andy Jean or, insert whoever you want to insert there into that next receiver that could hurt Miami. Because as much as we think Trey Wilson's a weapon, he's also a decoy. And so the big thing here is, can he get momentum early, which then, again, kind of starts that snowball effect we were just speaking to a second ago. Miami overcompensates, other weapons get working. And here's the thing. It's not just the fact that Florida's offense gets some momentum. It's what it does to the overall atmosphere. Because we talk about it, too, with the Swamp. Like, that would set that place on fire. The momentum gets rolling. The crowd gets rocking. And what does that do? It makes it harder for Miami's offense. So that matchup in itself, it's a small battle just schematically. How much do you try to take him away? How much are you able to take him away when it comes to Miami defending Trey Wilson? Do you bracket him? Do you trust someone to go man-to-man? If you do, more power to you. That's going to be a very, very massive part of this game and this game flow to begin with. Watch how Miami tries to defend number 3 for Florida. Now, here's another matchup I'm watching closely, and it's Damian Martinez, the transfer from Oregon State, playing running back for Miami, and how he looks against Florida's front seven. Because we talk so much around Shannon Dawson. He's got an air raid background. The OC for Miami has worked with Mike Leach and Hal Mummy, the godfathers of the air raid, and Cam Ward and his air raid background. But y'all, if you were to really sit down and talk some ball with him, they want to run the football. More specifically, they want to run the football north and south with some power run concepts. If you don't believe me, look at who their head coach is. An offensive lineman, Mario Cristobal. You can't change where you come from when it comes to the football world. He is from the offensive line. So if Damian Martinez is able to kind of get some momentum and get stronger as the game wears on, I mean, we talk about the swamp. That'll definitely turn down the volume there. It's depressing to watch your team give up a 16-play drive and, 8 of those plays, 9 of those plays be Damian Martinez runs. That, is just a gut punch. Settles in Cam Ward, opens up some things downfield. Like the way that would snowball, the same way we talk about Trey Wilson getting going, is the same effect I believe Damian Martinez could have in this football game. Now, here's the extra crucial point to know. Florida last year gave up 166 rush yards a game. Now, I think they're better in the front seven this season, so we'll see what they look like in this first game. But especially with the way that this whole setup could be for Florida and Miami. I'm talking like the weather is going to be brutal. It could be a little bit of some rain coming. We'll see. The last forecast I checked had 20% precipitation. There's going to be like 91 degrees on Saturday. So that to me says cramps in the third and fourth quarter. That to me says guys are getting winded early. As that wears on, that screams who can run the football. Puts you in another state of mind. Imagine Miami's up, let's say, in like the fourth quarter. I had a coworker tell me he had a dream that Miami was up in the fourth quarter and they were able to put the game on ice. If that happens, it's because Damian Martinez was able to run the football, probably convert a major first down, and then they're able to, again, put the game on ice. So Florida's ability to defend Damian Martinez is massive in the momentum it would have for Miami. And also, you want to put as much pressure on Cam Ward as possible, take away the run game, take away Damian Martinez. That'd be huge. So a major, major battle there. Now, one more matchup within this game. The question marks, I believe, that we have here for both sides of this thing, and really all offseason, this was a talking point for both sides. The Florida secondary and Miami's wide receiving core. Like Miami's receiving core, I believe, in a lot of ways is kind of the most underrated, under-talked about portion of their football team. Because as good as you think Cam Ward is, how many of y'all know it don't matter how good you think he is if there's no one for him to throw the football to. Now, Xavier Restrepo is an absolute dude. Josiah Trader, a guy they're really excited about, true freshman for them. Sam Brown, Jacoby George. They got some pieces there. But you still got to go win. The secondary for Florida had issues last year. They allowed 8.5 yards a pass. 124th in college football. There's only 134 teams. So that should tell you how much they were lacking in that department last season. Again, they think they are better in the secondary this year, does Florida. So that back and forth there is going to be massive. Can you step up where you have been deficient in previous seasons? I'm not saying Miami was bad last year in the receiving corps, but they did not have the weapons they needed. We didn't really get to see the weapons that they had last year, to be honest with you, be maximized in a spot like this to step up and win the most important game of your football team's season. Not just because it's week one, but for what it would be optically and the impact, the momentum, the confidence, all those things. That battle, to me, will have a very, very large part in how this game unfolds. So the lineup we have for you from, again, our friends over at Prize Picks, use code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups. When you use code HARDCOUNT, get you $50 in promo funds. Real, real good deal. So here's what we like. Trey Wilson, we like the more on his receiving yards, 69.5. Now that could be pop passes. That could be jet sweeps where you just kind of just throw it up to him. I guess that is a pop pass. At the end of the day, it all counts. They're going to force feed him the football. Regardless of the outcome, I have a hard time believing Trey Wilson will not have more than 69.5 receiving yards. So book that. Now, we talked about the wet conditions. It's going to be muggy. Again, that to me screams run the football. As good as Cam Ward is, you got to run the football, whether out of necessity or out of success. Damian Martinez, 74.5 rush yards. I like the more there. I like the less on Cam Ward's passing yards. Not because I'm down on Cam Ward, but I don't know if I want to take the more on 261.5 pass yards with it being a potentially rainy game. So that's the lineup we got for you. Again, Prize Picks, bringing you all the hard count. PrizePicks.com, code HARDCOUNT, get you started, and we'll have ourselves an absolute electric college football season. So speaking of electric now, Michigan, a lot of electricity, I believe, within that building. They are more than fine with everyone else being the talking points right now. That's fine. Talk about Ohio State. We're good with that. Talk about Ohio State. Talk about Georgia. Talk about Alabama. Talk about anyone and everyone you want to. But just, we'll be there when it's all said and done. We'll be waiting for y'all in November. I think that's how they feel right now in Ann Arbor. But even with that being said, they still have to decide who their starting quarterback is. And we got some more information on that heading into their first game against Fresno State. So here's what we know. It is down to Alex Orji and Davis Warren. Jack Tuttle, seventh-year senior, had a lot of momentum during summer around Ann Arbor in terms of like him potentially being the guy. Had some issues staying healthy, so it's down to those two right now. They are not going to announce a starter until like Friday night, Saturday morning. And when I say announce, like they're going to announce the starter to the quarterback room, and then I'm sure we'll all kind of find out at the same time. Just my gut feel on this. I happen to believe that we won't actually find out who the starting quarterback is until like you turn into like College Game Day or maybe even the game broadcast of Fresno State and Michigan. So that'll be a real good time. However, I don't know that we're going to have any clarity on this before the game actually gets rolling, or too far before the game actually gets rolling. Is my point there. So what should Michigan do when it comes to the starting quarterback? Whoever names the starting quarterback in this game, that's great. And then there's a lot of people right now that feel like it could be Alex Orji. He's got some momentum. The bottom line here is you should play both guys. And that's not to knock Fresno State, but there's a couple of reasons why. In this game, Michigan and their roster is good enough to just roll the football out there and win the game. Straightforward. Like there's not a lot more to unpack outside of that. So with you having a pretty good safety net that is the Michigan roster, there should be some confidence that these individuals are going to have a chance to kind of let loose, strut their stuff, and put their best foot forward. And it's one thing to win the job during practice, but like if I'm Sharon Moore, I want to see how these guys perform with live bullets, because you cannot replicate the 11-on-11 atmosphere you get in a real college football game. I don't care if it's a scrimmage. I understand Michigan's defense is real good, but there's something to be said for walking into the huddle as the quarterback and being the guy playing and play out throughout the course of a game. So it just gives you a better evaluation point outside of just practice. So that's massive. The other part of this, if you're Michigan, why not play both guys? Because you know who comes to town next week? Texas. All right? You really want to give them some clarity on, yeah, we're playing Alex Orji. Yeah, we're playing Davis Warren. No, make them prep for both guys. Cut their preparation time for Michigan's offense in half in terms of what they have to prepare for. If it is Alex Orji, if you're a Michigan fan, I think you should be encouraged. I think you should be encouraged because I'm assuming that at that point, he has played well enough to be the guy. And when I say played well enough, I mean played well enough at quarterback, because we already know he's going to be a guy that has a role for Michigan this year as their offensive weapon. He's going to have some packages. He's too good of an athlete to not have a couple of plays in the playbook for him. But if he wins the job, that means he threw the football well enough to win the job. I'm not just going to hand it to him because he's a good athlete. All right? Pretty straightforward there. So personally, here's how I feel about this. Where you can be definitive after this game, be definitive. I think it's best for a football team, for a locker room, to have somebody who's the leader, who they're following. Whoever you go with, empower him. Allow him to know that he's a starter. And it's not going to be a thing where, hey, week 6, week 7, threw that bad pass here, we're going to give the other guy more snaps. Like, roll with somebody. In modern college football, I do not remember the last time we saw somebody go genuinely 50-50, have a 2-quarterback system, and have real deal success that Michigan expects to have. For Michigan at the quarterback position, you just got to be complimentary. You just got to be the change-up to what they are offensively. All right? Because they're going to run the football well. They're going to play great defense. If you're the quarterback, there's really only a couple of games where you got to be the elevator and you have to make something happen. That's Oregon. That's Ohio State. Like last year, J.J. McCarthy, he was the change-up for them. When they needed to push the ball deep, he was the guy. So what do you need, I think, is another question you have to ask here. How much do you believe you need to involve your wide receiving core? How many times does Shamaj Morgan need to touch the football? Fred Moore need to touch the football? That's another question I think you have to ask, because if you feel like they have to be guys that get somewhere in the range of 7 or 8 catches a game, well, okay, you probably go with the better passer. But if you're like, hey, we can get them 4 or 5 catches a game and just kind of have our offense be multiple that way, well, if that's the case, then you let Alex Orji cook with how athletic he is, and he's going to be a good enough passer, I believe, to make that happen. So for me right now, it's probably still too early to call. If I had to make a decision here, I think you go with the better athlete, with Alex Orji. You double down on what you do well, which is smash mouth, run the football, move the line of scrimmage, and you get down from there. But again, Fresno State, play both guys. Play both guys, let them both get their feet wet, and allow the live bullets to dictate who should be your guy in 2024. Gonna be a good time, man. Week 1, it's upon us. The new college football era is upon us too, man. I'm excited for this next segment. I'm fired up here. This is something we're going to do here pretty consistently throughout the course of this season because I don't know if y'all been keeping track of new college football playoff format. So there is going to be a G5 team now that punches their ticket and ends up being in the dance. So if you're a college football fan and you're like, yeah, I could kind of take or leave action, can't do that anymore. Yeah, I kind of want to pay attention to the Fun Belt. Again, you're lost, but can't do that anymore. So to make sure we're all aligned on the same page here, this new segment, the 12 seed, with the man, the myth, the legend, Swiss Army knife, consistently in the background here of the hard count. Now on the air with us, my man Kaiden Smith. Kaiden, what's up, brother? I'm glad to have you here. This is dope.
Yes, sir, JD. It's been a long time coming. I'm excited to be here. I know we've been talking about this for a while, and we're finally making it happen. I know there's a lot of Power 5 football to talk about, Power 4 rather, this upcoming season, but this Group of 5 definitely has a lot of exciting stuff that I can't wait to chop it up about.
Dude, and we're here. It's funny because I'm looking at this camera, and you're right off to my right, so I'm going to try and not be too weird for the folks on YouTube consistently looking off to my right. But, dude, this is awesome. And also, we're not just going to someone who, likes to watch G5 football and, every now and then tunes in. This dude's from it. Played football at App State, knows not just the Sun Belt, but knows everything that has to do with the G5 world. Man, let's just get right to it. Boise State, they're the betting favorite. You buying or selling the Broncos when it comes to actually being a contender to be in the college football playoff as a 12 seed?
I'm buying the Broncos, JD. I think they're a favorite for the reason, and I think their whole season really kind of hinges on that quarterback position. They had a battle between Malachi Nelson, the former 5-star at USC, but Maddox Madison ended up winning that battle, and this is a guy who played in 9 games last year for this team when Taylor Green was looking a little bit rocky to start the season. Then he goes on to have a season-ending injury there to end the season, so he couldn't even compete in this battle in the spring, but then he comes in, wins that starting job in fall camp, and he has probably the best weapon behind him in Ashton Jeanty at the Group of 5 level, maybe even the entire country when you look at a versatile running back who was a 1,000-yard rusher. He had second in this team when it comes to receiving last year. So he has all the weapons. I think their offensive and defensive line might be the best in the entire Group of 5. So everything is set up for this team to be successful. I think it all just hinges on Madsen. And I think you look to have a great opportunity early in the season. Week 2 going to Oregon, that's going to be a tough matchup. Week 1, you can't overlook going to Georgia Southern as well. That's going to be a tough environment. But I think beyond that, you look at their schedule, pretty easy when it comes to Mountain West terms. And when you look at their schedule, they have to go to UNLV after a trip to Hawaii, which is probably going to be their toughest break there, but they avoid Air Force. They avoid playing Fresno State. So I think when you look at their schedule overall, their makeup of their team, a lot's going to hinge on that quarterback position, but I think they're very well poised to be 11-1, and they're going to play a hard team in their conference championship game. This is a team that produced, or a conference that produced 9-win teams, I think 4 of them last year. So I think when you look at them, they're poised, they'll be ready to go, but it's going to be about that quarterback position.
How much do you think we have to wait? Because you mentioned the game against Oregon early. If I am the college football playoff committee, some part of me feels like, hey, they played a Power 4 team. Even if they didn't win that game, that probably is a helpful data point. And everyone hates the word quality loss and eye test. But for Boise State, I'm if you go toe-to-toe with Oregon, let's say they lose that game by 10 points, I'm hey, maybe that should factor in a little bit for the Broncos. I know they're the betting favorite, but that should probably be something we look at for them as a data point if they do end up being on that doorstep of being a college football playoff team as let's call it a 2-loss conference champ or something in that range.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think when we talk about these 7 teams who I think have that best shot to be in there, a lot of them play teams that are top 25 ranked in the country. And you talk about close losses, maybe not counting in terms of Power 4 production and what you use for the eye test of who makes this tournament. But I think when you look at the Group of 5, it's going to be a huge barometer. We saw what Liberty looked like last year against Oregon, losing 45-6, and they didn't have any Power 4 teams on their schedule last year or this year. So to me, Florida State kind of set the precedent here a little bit. Sorry, Seminoles fans, but maybe the record doesn't always matter as much as the eye test overall in college football. But I think specifically in the Group of 5, we're going to have the opportunity to see some of these top teams go toe-to-toe on the road against some of the top Group of 5, Power 4 teams in the nation. And I think Boise State's one of the ones, many of the teams that have the opportunity to really make some noise, even with a close loss if they aren't able to pull out that upset win.
And you and I were we've been tinkering with this segment for a while now. We've been talking hey, when's the best time to do it? How often do you want to do it? And whenever we've been tinkering with this, we always get around to like, well, hey, Liberty on paper, like, probably should go undefeated. Should's a strong word. They got to play App State, which we'll talk about in a second. But like, if Liberty does go undefeated, I think this is one of Andy Staples' takes to start the year. He's like, Liberty's going to go undefeated, but they're going to miss the college football playoff. You mentioned last year with them, call a spade, falling flat on their face against Oregon in the New Year's Six Bowl. How do you assess Liberty heading into this season?
Yeah, I think they're fascinating to watch. You look at their schedule in Conference USA compared to some of these other conferences. It's night and day when it comes to competitiveness. I mean, they have this App State game that's going to be a big-time matchup, but a lot of these other teams have conference games and rivalries and matchups throughout the season that are built like this, and this is Liberty's biggest game by far. People are calling this the Group of Five Super Bowl, and I think when you look at this Liberty team, they're undoubtedly going to – I have no doubt they're going to probably run the table, if not have just one loss to App State. I mean, they return the best quarterback, the best running back units, defensive line, offensive line. It's night and day. I think Jacksonville State's the only team in this conference who could maybe give them a fight. They don't play them this year. Maybe TJ Finley in Western Kentucky can maybe have a shootout with them. But I think when you look at this Liberty team, they're going to run the table. They're going to be dominant. The question is going to be if they are able to do that. Do they still make the cut just based on what they did last year and based on some of the robustness of this league? When we just talk about the Group of Five in general, I think Kaiden Salter's an excellent player. They have excellent players all over the place relative to their conference, but maybe some of these other teams who have better size matchups, better mismatches when it comes to playing and proving maybe that they can stand toe-to-toe with some Power 5 teams might work in their favor versus Liberty's favor.
Did we mention Western Kentucky? We got a soft spot for the Hilltoppers on this show. Fighting Nick Briggs. I don't know if they're really going to be like a playoff team in that conversation, but are they someone where it's like, hey, just keep an eye on the Hilltoppers? I don't know what their odds are actually to make the college football playoff, but I'm basically asking this out of bias for this show, out of bias for Nick Briggs, and this is totally a curveball. Like WKU, are they kind of a speed bump for somebody? Like, how did you assess WKU? Because they got Bama the first game of the year in the Producer Bowl. Trey Annity is a Bama alum, and Nick Briggs is a WKU alum. I mean, I'm throwing you just a massive curveball here. I have done very little work on WKU. Any thoughts on the tops? Any thoughts on the Hilltoppers here in this one?
Well, my first thoughts, I know that's a place of affinity for Nick Briggs, but that's who I played in my last college football game in the Boca Raton Bowl, where Bailey Zappi broke Joe Burrow's touchdown record. They put it on us. They laid it on us in that game, and their offense continues to be able to play. I think their offense is going to be the key to them doing anything as far as making noise for that 12-team playoff. But you mentioned their opportunity in week one. I think when you look at these Power 5 matchups and these draws compared to the Group of 5, that's a very good opportunity where maybe if they stand toe-to-toe with an Alabama, play well, get some good momentum going. TJ Finley had an excellent season last year for Texas State. If he can carry that over to Western Kentucky, then maybe we see the Hilltoppers make their way in that conversation.
And I want to kind of jump around too, because you mentioned Texas State, and we're getting ready for this segment. And my guy, I want to put this up on the camera because, like, we got a Google Doc going. My guy just blessed me with all the G5 intel. Like, talk about doing your homework. Texas State's on that list for you, though. They're kind of maybe a further shot to be a team that makes the college football player from the G5. But, I mean, it doesn't have to just be Texas State. I know there's other teams that you're high on. Other teams that are maybe not getting as much buzz right now to be that G5 rep, to be that 12 seed, maybe that you think deserve a little more attention as we jump into this first month of the season.
Yeah, my choice for this is Texas State. I think they have probably the 7th best odds out of all the Group of 5 teams, and I think they have the best value overall. They bring back G.J. Kinney, who was an amazing head coach who turned this program around completely last year. They had their first winning season in a long, long time. They bring Jordan McLeod, the Sun Belt Player of the Year from James Madison, to Texas State, and he's probably going to have an excellent season. Ismail Mahdi is the running back behind him, a versatile player who's kind of the Ashton Jeanty, I would say, of the Sun Belt Conference. And what I like the most about Texas State, other than returning a ton of starters, have an explosive offense. I was one of the best in the country last year, is their schedule and their path to make it to this playoff. You talk about their non-conference game against UTSA in week 2. In week 3 rather. That's going to be a huge matchup. They only lost to this team by 7 points last year, and that team doesn't have Frank Harris this year, and they have a lot of their returning players back for the Bobcats. And then they also have a great opportunity going up against Arizona State. It's kind of their Power 4 draw. If you had to pick any Power 4 team to play in the nation, they're probably in that mix when you talk about the Sun Devils. So I think they have a path to have an impressive-ish non-conference slate, and then when you get to their conference slate, the Sun Belt is the only conference in the entire college football FBS that still has divisions, and the West Division is a lot less stacked than that East Division where Texas State resides. They have 3 new head coaches over there. The only 2 teams that didn't make a bowl game last year in that West Conference, and I think when you look into Arkansas State and Louisiana, who beat this team last year, they all come to San Marcos this year. So I think, close your ears, App State fans, but I think this Texas State team is really dangerous. They could make it to this conference title game. They could win this conference, and I think if they have an undefeated team, they will quickly become a dark horse in that team that people maybe are looking at to be that 12 seed this year.
Dude, don't tell me that. Don't because I have App State as my G5 rep for the college football playoff. Bring back 68% production from last year's team that played for the Sun Belt Championship, fell short against Troy at Clemson week 2. I don't know what Clemson's going to be, but you imagine maybe they're – I mean, either way you slice it. Maybe let's say they pull off the upset against Georgia, which would be an upset, double-digit underdog, and then they're riding that high. You come home, and who do you have but G5 rolling in there with App State? Or maybe you lose that game. You're licking your wounds. You're kind of discombobulated. I like the spot there for App State is all I'm going to say. We'll talk about that as being one on upset watch when it does arrive here. But, man, you played for the Mountaineers. That's a school that's near and dear to your heart. What do you make of App State when it comes to their chances to be in the college football playoff?
I love their shot, too, for sure. And you talk about them playing Clemson and just this team's pedigree against Power 5 opponents. I mean, It's been since 2017 and forward, this team, every single time they play a Power 5 opponent, it's a one-score game. You got a win over North Carolina. You got a win over South Carolina, Texas A&M, close loss to Miami, overtime loss to Penn State. This team comes to play, and they're going to be ready to play against Clemson. My biggest worry is getting through the gauntlet of the Sun Belt untouched. You have the Georgia-Southern rivalry, which is one of those ones where you throw the records out the way, and it's just playing ball. You have Marshall. You have Coastal Carolina. They draw Louisiana, Lafayette on the other side. So it's going to be a tough road for them. You have that matchup against Liberty as well, but this is a team who lost a bunch of one-score games early in the season, then really caught their rhythm in November on and made their way back to the Sun Belt title game. Joey Aguilar is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Even talking about that Clemson game specifically, I like Joey Aguilar in that matchup over Cade Klubnik with just what he's able to do from a physicality standpoint, what he's proven in the past. So I think App State's in a good spot. The only question mark I think for them is up front. They have a lot of new faces on that offensive line. Coach Clark loves that unit. Sean Clark said it's a big athletic group, and he's an offensive line coach himself, so he can get that right. But other than that, the Mountaineers are probably looking poised to not only be in that 12-seed conversation, but have the respect nationally just based on what they've done in the past to separate themselves and hopefully go undefeated in that Sun Belt and maybe for the Mountaineers take it home as far as a playoff team.
Just got to keep the helmets in practice on the head. Just got to keep them right here, buckle the chin strap, and we just, maybe we don't do anything else with those if you're catching my drift. Now, Kaiden, I appreciate just all the intel, brother. We could not let you go without putting you on the spot here and saying, all right, Kaiden Smith, we're about to jump into week 1 of the college football season. We're going to talk a lot of G5 throughout the course of this season as it pertains to the college football playoff. If you had to pick today, you had to pick one horse, no pun intended, that you had to roll with here, who would that be?
I have to go with a horse, JD. I'm going with Boise State. I love App State, but I think either team making it out of the Sun Belt is just going to be too hard as far as beating up on each other, and I'm afraid the committee's not going to maybe take too close enough of a look at how competitive the Sun Belt is, how competitive the AAC is. I think those two conferences kind of cannibalize themselves throughout the season, and I think when you look at Boise State, I think they have an easy road as far as making it through their own conference schedule. You get Oregon in week 2, which maybe Oregon doesn't have everything all the way figured out. You can make that a close game, maybe get an upset win there. And I think, like I mentioned before, it's all in the quarterback position. This team has the best offensive and defensive line probably combined in the group of 5 level. They have the pedigree of going and playing Power 5 teams in the past, having some fond memories when it comes to the allure of making it. And I think storylines do matter in this. I think the first year of the 12-team playoff, having a Boise State team return to that national stage is something maybe the committee considers, and they have all the pieces, I think, to go toe-to-toe and maybe get an upset win in this playoff. So give me Boise State right now. Fate of the universe on the line, I have to go with Boise State, unfortunately. But the Sun Belt, too, I think if you want to go with the pedigree of App State or the potential of Texas State, if either of those teams go undefeated, too, I think they have a great shot as well.
Dude, I just need, there's a certain part of my heart that just remembers, the old Boise State days, Jared Zabransky, Ian Johnson, Kellen Moore, Austin, those
Statue of Liberty, man.
Statue of Liberty, it lives in my head rent-free. But, man, we're so fired up to keep doing this with you, man, throughout the course of this season. Again, Kaiden Smith, follow him on Twitter. Just producing bangers on the Round Table YouTube channel. So, Kaiden's here to stay, all right? So, Kaiden, we appreciate you, brother. Going to be a good time talking some G5 ball throughout the course of this season.
Appreciate you, JD.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. And also, big shouts to the production team because Kaiden is coming in from the office behind us. And we're just rocking and rolling here whenever he jumps in. So, it is a sleight of hand game going on right now to get him in and out of the studio. So, shouts to Trey Andy and Nick Brake making that happen. Again, big shouts to Kaiden Smith, talking a little G5, the 12 seed. If it's not the 12 seed at the end of the season, that would be really unfortunate for how we've decided to brand it as the 12 seed with that segment being G5 centric. But regardless, again, appreciate Kaiden Smith jumping on here and producing some bangers for us as we jump in to week 1 of the college football season. All right, the time has come here. The time has come. If you tuned into our show a season ago, well, 1, we're glad that you're back. 2, we do on Thursdays our final thoughts for the week ahead. So the predictions are done. The takes are, for the most part, already out there for y'all to agree with or disagree with. This is kind of our final thoughts on what we're going to be maybe leery of and things that we think will happen in this this beautiful college football weekend. Just kind of giving our last thought before we jump off of the live stream with y'all. So here's my first final thought for you. I think that the Carson Beck hype, the Heisman hype, whether you think he's going to win the award or not, after this week it is going to be blaring, because you have a game in a very national spot with a national brand in Clemson to really kick off the college football week 1 events right after game day, and it's going to be I think they're going to absolutely roll. I do. I also think it's worth noting here, we think about Georgia being tough, physical, gritty up front. Y'all, Georgia is typically in the earlier parts of their seasons the last 2 years been a pass-to-run kind of team. Even going back to Stetson Bennett, they were averaging 30 attempts a game. They averaged right around 30 attempts a game early in last season. So what I'm trying to say here is, with Carson Beck now going into his second year, it's very obvious he is the guy, not just the guy to be the starting quarterback at Georgia, but the guy that will lead this team at Georgia. All the weapons he has, they are going to open it up against Clemson. He's going to have a massive day. I don't know what his prize picks number is off the top of my head, but whatever it is, I'd feel very, very good about taking the more there. There's going to be a lot of juice for Carson Beck. Think about that jump that Stetson Bennett took from year 1 to year 2 as the guy at Georgia. Carson Beck, for my money, had a better first year as a starting quarterback at Georgia. Could potentially have a better year too. So keep an eye on Carson Beck. Not really a hot take by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just telling you now, the Carson Beck Heisman hype, the headlines of Beck for Heisman, all that is coming. All right, that is very much so on the way. Now, I also think that this weekend with LSU and USC, we see the return of the old Harold Perkins. There's that Vine. Man, how many of y'all remember Vine? Golly, feeling like I'm aging myself a little bit here talking about Vine. There's that old, maybe it's on TikTok too, that high school player in the locker room. I think it's before a state title game in Michigan. He says, "I think I got my swagger back." I think that's Harold Perkins, y'all. I think he's got his swagger back. I think we see the return of what he was his freshman season this upcoming Sunday against USC. USC, 3 new starters on the offensive line, had a sack rate that was right around 6% last year. It's not great. Harold Perkins is mayhem from the insurance commercials. That's who he is. You got to have your insurance to be better protected from mayhem like Harold Perkins. I don't think they'll have that insurance. I think Harold Perkins is going to have a big day. And I think for Blake Baker, the fit that he is with Harold Perkins' skill set, they want to accomplish the same thing. I mean, it is just hand-to-glove fit. They want to apply pressure. They want to get after you. Blake Baker wants to do that. Harold Perkins wants to do that. To have your DC and the best player on your defense perfectly aligned in what they do best, that's going to be magic. I cannot wait to see it. I think he wreaks havoc. It may not be where he has 2 sacks. It might be he forces a fumble. It might be he has a couple of pass deflections. Maybe he has a lot of pressures. He's not going to blitz every snap, but when he does, he will wreak havoc. He'll make his presence felt. Harold Perkins, good to see you again. Glad to have you back here. Now, I know that it's Akron. I understand it's Akron, okay? I get it. Ohio State hosting the Zips. I know the spread is 48.5. I know that. All right, I understand that. However, I think Ohio State covers that. And my take here is that Ohio State covers the spread. That's not really very interesting for any of us. But I do think we see Ohio State, similar to what I said about Harold Perkins being back to his old form, I think we see Ohio State back to who we've expected them to be. And I'm not just talking about when C.J. Stroud was the quarterback. I'm talking about the overall brand that the good people of Ohio want to see their football team play with, want to see their football team have. Because Chip Kelly now is the OC. They want to run the ball. And last year, the offense, make no mistake, it wasn't bad, but there's a reason why you went out and got Will Howard. There's a reason why you went out and got Quinshawn Judkins. You didn't have to, but there was a reason. The effort and the reason is to run the football. Okay? So, there were signs last year. There were signs last year early of what Ohio State offensively was going to be. Y'all, they scored 23 against Indiana. I know it was Indiana. I know it was the first game. I know it was a Power 4 conference opponent, but I'm just saying now, that same Indiana team went 3-9. They allowed 32 points a game. We could tell from the jump, hey, maybe there's something to look at here. We didn't overreact, but you kind of saw that, and you're like, oh, it doesn't look right. That doesn't exactly look how it's supposed to look. We're going to see Chip Kelly's fingerprints all over the run game in this offense. We're going to see Quinshawn Judkins have a massive day. We're going to see Trevion Henderson have a massive day. Will Howard probably will play the first half, and I think have a great day as well. I know that it's Akron. I'm not worried about the score. I'm worried about how Ohio State's offense is going to look. And when I say worry, I mean I'm not worried about how they're going to look because I think they're going to be dominant. And I think they're going to kind of refresh all of our memories of like, oh, yeah, that's the Ohio State brand of football that we've been missing for a while. That's the gritty, physical, upfront approach. Also, I think they'll play with some good tempo, which will be fun to see if you're a Buckeye fan. Now, here's a couple of words of caution as we jump into week one. Be patient with first-year starting quarterbacks. Be patient. And I'm not saying if they have a horrible day at the office, don't criticize them. This is big boy college football. But like for Dylan Raiola, Nico Iamaleava, Jackson Arnold, those are all guys with a lot of stars next to their name for a reason because they're super talented. But with stars next to your name comes great expectations. Like the first interception any one of those guys throws in this first weekend of college football, Jackson Arnold playing on Friday against Temple, they're going to be saying, see, told you they're overrated, they're not that good. Like, just give it a second to marinate. This is hard stuff. This is not high school football. Even for the guys that redshirted, there might be an acclimation period. I think all three of these cats are going to have really good college careers. I really do. I think all three of them are going to be studs. But the temptation is to, as soon as they don't measure up to what we've expected them to be in our minds, they fall victim to our expectations. Who's actually wrong when someone underachieves your expectations and you don't actually have any basis for those expectations outside of what you saw at the high school level? Give them some time to acclimate. Give them some time to get there. Again, I think Dylan Raiola, what you ask of him early in the season for Nebraska and what you ask of him later in the season will be two different things because, again, he's a true freshman. Nico Iamaleava, I think you'll cut him loose a little bit more for Tennessee. Jackson Arnold, I think you'll cut him a little bit more loose for Oklahoma. But still, just be patient. Be patient with them is all I'm trying to say here. Don't overreact and say they're not good, they're not this, they're not that. We don't know. Be patient. Last thing, and we've said this for a while now, but we'll say it one more time. Whatever happens in Florida versus Miami, Twitter's going to go nuts. Folks on different shows will go nuts. There will be a ton of memes out there making fun of whoever the losing head coach is. They're going to go nuts. We're telling you right now, be cool. Hold your water. Whatever happens in this game, yes, optically, it's impactful. Yes, for the winning side, it's obviously a massive benefit to have that confidence and have a win like that under your belt, whether it's Florida beating a team like Miami, who's perceived to be a college football playoff contender, whether it's Miami going into the swamp and finding a way to get it done, which is no small task. It doesn't define either side. A loss does not mean they're not the answer. So all I'm trying to say here is be cool because everyone around you, every other opinion, every other person that has a Twitter account is not going to be cool. We will do our very best to be cool on this show and be level and even with the takes that we give you about that game. But I'm just saying now, do not fall victim to the punchline culture that will be turned up to 11 after that game finishes. So week one's going to be a movie, man. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to share it with y'all. I cannot wait to talk about it with y'all. For those of y'all listening on podcasts, little update here. We come in here Sunday morning, 7 a.m.-ish our time to just start cranking out the content for you, give you as much of a reaction as early as possible to these games. As soon as you wake up in the morning on Sunday, we try to have that out for you. Those are all typically like what we call one-off videos, so like small segments that we would put on the YouTube channel. We're going to have a lot of those that we splice together, and by we, I mean Nick Brake is going to splice together, putting in just work, putting in shifts to make some of that a podcast product for you. So if you want to get some reaction from, what happened the day before on Sunday, go to the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, no judgment, wherever you get them, and you can find a Hard Count podcast from the videos from Sunday, if that makes sense. Just making sure we're all aligned there. All right, so I want to give you a quick ad read here. The Hard Count is brought to y'all by our friends over at Game Time. Now, if you've been tuned into the Hard Count for any length of time, you know that Game Time is one of the good ones. All right, one of the good ones. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets this college football season. Make sure you buy the best tickets at the lowest prices guaranteed. Download the Game Time app. Create an account, use code HARDCOUNT for $20 off your first purchase. Couple of things to like about the Game Time app. You've heard me say this a lot. You know when you buy what you're going to be seeing from your seat. Some of y'all that have purchased tickets other ways, you know the sinking feeling of walking up to your seat and realizing your view is trash. You're like, I could have stayed home, watched this via broadcast, and had a better view of this game and enjoyed myself a lot more. That's not the case with Game Time. Know your view before you buy using the Game Time app. Also, if you find a ticket in the same section and row for less than what you paid for, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That is the Game Time guarantee. Game Time also got something they're working with right now called Game Time Picks. I want to highlight that for y'all. Game Time will analyze thousands of tickets for all your favorite events, find the best tickets so you don't have to, and then you just get to choose the right deal for you. So Game Time essentially helping you make sure you have all the events you want to go to at the best prices and kind of serving that up for you, again, via Game Time Picks. So again, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code HARDCOUNT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code HARDCOUNT. That's spelled HARDCOUNT for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, we're here now, baby. We're here now. The hay's in the barn. A lot of y'all now are starting to dial in your bets for college football Saturday. We'll have our own bets for you. Against the Suits is going to be back on my Instagram page. So follow me at JD Pickell. We will have all of our bets that we are making, or would be making rather, I suppose, for lack of a better term, on my Instagram page. So follow me there. We'll have those there. And, man, it's going to be a fun season. It's going to be a fun season. Going to be wild. Going to be very much so a having to retrain our brain this season. But it's back, man. Waited a long time. Y'all waited a long time with us for us to get back to actual football games being played. And, man, we're so grateful for you for making this show what it is and for making college football the communal deal that it is as well. So, again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But we love y'all, man. Let's have the greatest college football season in history. Nick Brake producing the show from yours truly, JD Pickell. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all.